If DTCC just went live, why didn't XRP's price move? It's one of the biggest questions XRP holders are asking right now. For months, many investors believed that once DTCC reached another major milestone, XRP would finally react. But the day came, the headlines appeared, the excitement spread across social media, and yet XRP's price barely moved. So what happened? Did everyone get it wrong? Did DTCC have nothing to do with XRP? Or is there something much bigger that most people are missing? In today's video, we're going to answer that question using facts instead of hype. We'll explain what DTCC actually does, why so many people connected it to XRP in the first place, and why expecting an immediate price explosion may have been unrealistic. Because here's the first thing we need to understand. Many investors hear the name DTCC and immediately assume it's directly integrating XRP. That's not necessarily what the public information says. DTCC, the Depository Trust and Clearing Corporation, is one of the world's largest financial market infrastructure organizations. It helps process and settle an enormous volume of financial transactions every year. When DTCC announces new blockchain initiatives or modernization projects, it's easy to see why the XRP community pays attention. Ripple has spent years talking about faster settlement, tokenization, and modern financial infrastructure. So naturally, many people assume these stories are directly connected, but that's where expectations can sometimes move faster than the facts. A major infrastructure upgrade doesn't automatically mean billions of dollars instantly begin flowing through a specific digital asset. Large financial institutions don't flip a switch overnight. They test systems, they run pilot programs, they manage risk, they introduce new technology in phases, and they monitor performance before expanding adoption. That's how critical financial infrastructure has always evolved. Think about upgrading an international airport. The runway may officially open today, but that doesn't mean every airline immediately reroutes every flight through that airport. It takes time, schedules change gradually, airlines evaluate performance, passengers slowly begin using the new routes. Financial infrastructure works in much the same way. Now let's bring XRP back into the discussion. Many XRP supporters believe the XRP ledger is well positioned for fast settlement and digital asset infrastructure. That's a separate question from whether DTCC is currently driving XRP demand today. Those are two different conversations, and mixing them together often leads to disappointment. This is something we've seen repeatedly across crypto. A major partnership is announced, a pilot program begins, a regulatory milestone happens, yet the market barely reacts. Why? And because markets don't price in headlines alone, they price in expectations, probability, timing, and actual economic impact. If investors already expected a certain event, much of that optimism may have been reflected in the market long before the announcement itself. That's one of the oldest principles in investing. Markets often react not to the news, but to whether the news is better or worse than expected. So if DTCC going live wasn't enough to move XRP's price, what actually does move markets? The answer is much less exciting than many social media posts suggest. Markets don't move simply because a new technology becomes available. They move when investors believe that technology will generate real economic value. Think about the internet. Just because broadband internet became available didn't mean every internet company became valuable overnight. Some businesses succeeded, others disappeared. What mattered wasn't the technology itself. It was who used it, how widely it was adopted, and whether it solved real problems. The same principle applies to blockchain. DTCC modernizing parts of its infrastructure is certainly an important development for the financial industry. But modernization alone doesn't automatically create buying pressure for XRP. There still has to be a clear connection between the technology and actual demand for the asset. And that's where many investors accidentally mix two very different ideas together. The first is industry progress. The second is asset demand. Those are not always the same thing. For example, if banks begin tokenizing assets, if settlement systems become faster, if financial institutions upgrade their infrastructure, those developments may be positive for the broader digital asset industry, but they don't automatically mean institutions are buying XRP today. Real price appreciation usually happens when markets see evidence that demand for an asset is actually increasing. Not simply because another piece of infrastructure has gone live. This is why experienced investors often pay closer attention to adoption than announcements. Announcements create headlines. Adoption creates long-term demand. Another important factor is timing. Large financial institutions rarely move billions of dollars into new systems on day one. They typically begin with testing, then pilot programs, then limited production environments. Only after those stages prove successful do they consider broader implementation. That process can take months or even years. So expecting a major infrastructure milestone to immediately produce a dramatic price reaction may not match how institutional adoption usually works. Now let's address another misconception. Some people believe that if XRP didn't surge immediately after a major headline, then the entire thesis must be wrong. That's not necessarily true either. Financial markets often price assets based on expectations long before events officially happen. Sometimes the news arrives exactly as expected, and because investors already anticipated it, the market barely reacts. Other times, markets wait for evidence that adoption is translating into measurable activity before revaluing an asset. That's why you'll often hear experienced investors say, the market cares more about results than announcements. And perhaps that's the most important lesson here. DTCC's progress, regulatory developments, institutional partnerships, and technological improvements may all matter. But markets ultimately ask one question: will these developments create sustained demand over time? That's a much harder question to answer than simply asking whether a particular event happened. So why didn't DTCC move XRP's price? Because infrastructure alone doesn't create price appreciation. DTCC going live may be an important step for the modernization of financial markets, but that doesn't automatically mean institutions begin buying XRP the very next day. Real price movement usually comes from growing demand, not just positive headlines. As adoption expands, regulations become clearer, and financial institutions begin using blockchain solutions at a larger scale. Markets will naturally evaluate whether that creates meaningful demand for assets like XRP. That's a process, not a single event. So instead of asking, why didn't XRP pump after DTCC? A better question is, what signs would show that institutions are actually increasing their use of digital asset infrastructure? Those are the signals long-term investors should pay attention to. Remember, markets often move based on adoption, liquidity, and sustained demand, not because one announcement appears on social media. Now I'd like to hear your opinion. Do you think DTCC was ever supposed to move XRP's price, or were investors expecting too much from a single milestone? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. I read as many comments as I can. If you enjoyed this fact-based explanation and want more XRP videos that separate facts from speculation, make sure to like this video, subscribe to OG John XRP Insights, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next one. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.